We want to move on from interpretation and move into application.
Yeah. So this is another key part, because I think often what happens when you receive a word from the Lord yourself that you want to give, that scenario in particular, you're just so excited that God's spoken and that you've got an idea of what it means and you just want to share it. But not everything we hear needs sharing. So Alex's earlier example of, some woman told him they were going to get married. And so I felt the Lord tell me about one of our moves that we made. And so I felt quite strongly what it was and what it meant, and yet I kept it within me. I didn't share it because I didn't feel it was right to share at that moment. I shared it later. So anyway, we have got...
And just to complete that story, what that meant was Hannah actually, God told her the town we were going to move to and the church. And 3 months later was when that church reached out to us and said, would you consider coming here? So this was like months in advance. And we said, we decided to pray and fast about it. And when we came together to share where we're up to on it, Hannah said to me, well, you go first. And so we talked, and I said, well, I feel like this is something I think God's saying we should explore it. And she felt the same thing and said, oh, and by the way, 3 months ago, this is what I felt God say to me. And the fact that she was patient and wise enough to wait for that really helped, because she gave me room to process it in my own right. Because if I'd heard it first, it would have messed it up, wouldn't it?
It would circumvent.
Yeah, because I deeply value and honour Hannah. So if Hannah felt that and I knew that up front, I probably wouldn't have processed it very objectively. Whereas me coming to it separately meant that we both came to a common mind. Then we hear the word as well, and it's super encouraging. And so that was just really helpful for that
But
process.
also, down the line, once we moved to that place and things didn't go according to plan, as they often don't. And so we had some hardship and some hassle with all of that. And so had we just moved off the back of this word, Alex may well have turned to me and blamed me and said, it was your word, God spoke to you, why did we do this? Whereas, because...
So if I would do a thing like that, honestly.
Whereas... because we'd both separately come to this conclusion, and this is just a confirmation. When it happened, it was still a confirmation. We absolutely believe it was the right thing to do, but it was a confirmation rather than just basing all of this big move on one prophetic word.
Okay, you've got a list in front of you. We're going to give you 10 ways you can apply a prophetic word. Sometimes, by the way, you might do several of them, so it's not like you can only do one. But here's just 10 ways you can apply a prophetic word. The first one, and actually we would suggest this is probably the most important one, is prayer. So God reveals something to you. You get a sense of what it's about, some sort of interpretation and weighing for that person. But you know what? Just because you've got that far, that doesn't mean you're meant to share it. It might simply be the Lord wants you to pray about it for that person. It might be that further down the line you share it with them. It may be they never even hear about this thing until we get to glory, perhaps. But God is telling you, I've given you some clarity so you can pray with more focus and specificity.
The second one is encouragement. So maybe that word is just for general encouraging, strengthening and comfort, as in that Corinthians passage that we read to you earlier. So maybe that's all it is. It's just encouragement.
Number 3, identity and destiny. Often we find that God speaks to people about who they are and what they've been made to do or what they've been made to be. We've noticed, and we'll probably share this story another time, we do quite a lot of street evangelism using prophecy, and it's not as scary as it sounds. Actually, it's some of the easiest evangelism you'll ever do. But what we find is when God starts to speak to non-Christians, he speaks about their identity and about their destiny, and he's like these often even quite simple prophetic words really tap into something very deep in a person, into their psyche, into their self-understanding, into their hopes and their dreams. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. And God loves to speak to us, to build us up in who you are meant to be. This is the sort of man you're meant to be. This is sort of what it means for you to be a woman of God. And this is the dream God has for your life. And it's so amazing, and it's so powerful, and it's so life-giving.